The dark dungeons of the Count's habitants remains the most feared among the lowly peasants. It is said, the one to step foot is never to leave, only to be embraced by death. Perhaps a mere plague, I claim not. He feasts on the blood of mere folk, never to attain salvation. In the shadows of the night it hides, unless sleep at daybreak. Addressed as a monster, the tales call him a vampire. But Grandad, Daddy says it's not real. What must a fool know of the truth? I've seen it with my own eyes. Their skin pale as the moon, lips as red as the purest of blood, and the tinge of it leaves them craving for more. It's time now you take rest, my dear. I must leave for home. You must not, Grandad. I shall accompany you. Accompany me, huh? That's impossible. Instead, I could take you on a trail of the origins of the vampire. Vampires, creatures inhumane yet human. Vampires are mythological creatures that are typically depicted as undead beings that feed on the blood of the living. They have been a part of folklore, literature, and pop culture for centuries, evolving over time into the various forms we recognize today. In many legends, vampires are characterized by their immortality, or at least for their very long life, superhuman strength, and enhanced senses. They are usually sensitive to sunlight, which can weaken or even destroy them, and are often described as having pale skin, fangs, and sharp predatory features. The concept of the vampires can be traced back to various cultures around the world, with Eastern European and Slavic myths being some of the most well known sources of modern vampire lore. The idea of a vampire emerging from the grave to suck the blood of the living was particularly prominent in the 18th century Europe, with effects like the vampire panic in Hungary and the stories surrounding individuals like Vlad the Impaler became the inspiration for Bram Stoker's Dracula. Vampires are often portrayed as charismatic and seductive figures who use their allure to manipulate their victims, making them both feared and fascinating. But to grasp the knowing of the first ever vampire record, to the 1600s we go. In the quiet, mist-shrouded hills of Asteria, a village lay nested in the shadows of towering cypress trees. The villagers, a superstitious lot, lived simple lives, tilling their plows into the rich soil and mending their nets at the shore. But there was one name that sent a chill down their spines, a name whispered in hushed tones when the moon hung low in the sky. Jure Grando. Jure had lived a hard life, a man like any other with calloused hands and thick beard that told tales of many winters. His home was modest, tucked in the outskirts of the village, but the story of Jure Grando began the day church bells tolled his death. It was a bleak morning when the village priest, with sorrow in his heart, declared that Jure had passed away. The villagers mourned, for he has been a familiar face among them. Yet not long after his funeral, strange things began to happen. Livestock were found dead in the fields, drained of all blood, and a strange, icy wind swept through the village at night. Those who lived near the graveyard claimed they could hear faint footsteps, as though someone or something was walking among the graves. And then, on one odd, moonless night, a horror more terrifying than any villager could ever imagine was unleashed. It was Marija, a young woman who had once known Jure, who first saw him. She had been standing in her window when through the dense fog she saw him, a figure draped in a cloak, pale as death, with eyes that glowed like burning embers. His skin was cold and his mouth hung open, as though gasping for something. He was no longer the man he had known. He was something far worse, something from the dark corners of the world. Jure Grando had risen from the grave. He came every night, walking through the village like a spectator, his chilling presence spreading fear wherever he went. Some say he knocked on doors seeking the warmth of life, but instead he left a cold, lingering dread. Others claim that in the dead of night he would stand at the foot of their beds, staring with eyes that pierced the soul. The villagers, terrified and desperate, knew that something had to be done. They turned to the oldest of old traditions, once whispered about their ancestors but long forgotten. They called upon the priest once more, but this time not to bury a body, but to end the curse. Armed with nothing but a silver cross and a prayer, the priest and a group of villagers went to Jure's grave. When they unearthed his body, they found it strangely well preserved, his face frozen in an expression of torment. The villagers, knowing what had to be done, drove a wooden stake through his heart, binding him to the earth forever. The moment the stake pierced his heart, the air grew still, the fog receded, and the night was silent. Jure Grando's reign of terror had come to an end. But the story of Jure didn't end there. It spread across the region, becoming a legend, passed from one generation to next. Some say that even today, on the darkest of night, his restless spirit still wanders those hills, seeking revenge, a chilling reminder that some stories never truly die. And so the name Jure Grando remains etched into the folklore of Hysteria, presently Croatia, forever a part of his shadowed past, a tale of a man who rose from the grave and became something far darker than death itself. And clearly, this wasn't the only claim. Different mythologies claim it as different creatures, but the thing in common was surviving by feeding on thick, red blood. These creatures were not human, though, not entirely. The Mesopotamian vampire, Lamastu, is a demoness known for the earliest recorded supernatural creatures. Her appearance seemed to be depicted as a hybrid creature, part woman, part animal, usually with a lion's head and a donkey's body, famously for attacking pregnant women and infants, feasting on their flesh. She brought upon plague, nightmares, and diseases. The ancient Greek vampire, Styges. These vampiric creatures, often depicted as malevolent birds like beings that feasted on humans. Strix originally referred to an owl or a nocturnal bird. Greek feared them as blood drinking witches or demons. In the ancient scriptures, they are described as bat winged creatures with sharp beaks, capable of shape shifting into old women and then sucking on blood of infants or even adults. The Philippine vampire, Manananggal, one of the most terrifying creatures to ever have walked Earth, a shape shifting woman that could detach her upper body from her lower half and fly into the night to feed on human blood. Beautiful by day, but at night turns into a dreaded monster. The Romanian strigoi, bald on top of the head, does not eat garlic and onions, avoid incense, and towards the feast of Saint Andrew they sleep outdoors. The spine is elongated in the shape of a tail, covered with hair. If there is a drought in a village, it means that there is a strigoi that prevents the rain. Do you see the similarities? But how do these blood-sucking creatures got the name vampire, or even come out to be imagined as something of a human figure? The answer remains in one's imagination, or maybe in the 18th century. The day had dawned, and all that walked in the footsteps of the shadows were creatures dreaded, maybe stories or pranks at play, but one couldn't dismiss the claims of the happenings of unknown death all over the town. Thus began superstitions or truth for some as they went hunting for blood-sucking, shadowy creatures, and with that came certain measures to prevent or even to kill a vampire. Vampire killing kits became famous, consisting of garlic stench, A crucifix, stakes, a mallet, rosary, a prayer book, and a pistol along with a note bearing the words, "But those mine enemies, which would not that I should reign over them, being hither, and slay them before me." These vampire killing kits were used to draw the stake through the heart of the vampire. At times they were burnt, beheaded, or even exposed to sunlight to be killed. Perhaps these devilish practices were the starting point of the well known novels of olden times, The Vampire, Carmilla, and famously Bram Stoker's Dracula. These works of fiction were meant to draw the vampiric tales with them as well. But how must we know what beholds the dark corners of the world? You might have seen them, even become friends with them. You might even be one. So come back again at this nocturnal hour to witness another horrifying tale.